Hi, my name is Barry Jenkins. I'm the writer-director of Moonlight, which is adapted from the play in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue, by Terrell McCraney, who, like me, grew up pretty much in all the locations you're going to see throughout the film. About 3 years ago, to the moment that I'm recording this commentary, I went to Brussels, Belgium, and I did like the first draft of adapting Terrell's play. And I was just reminded of that because the A24 and Plan B logo came up, and I introduced 12 Years a Slave at the Telluride Film Festival and reconnected with Plan B. And that's how this whole thing sort of got on the road, and joining up myself and Adela Romansky with those Plan B guys. So this is cool. So this little stretch of block right here isn't exactly where I grew up, but it's pretty close. And James, the cinematographer, and Adela, one of the producers, and I really wanted to open the film sort of like rooted in the community. And that's how we settled on the spot.
Look, man, I don't mean no disrespect or nothing to you. I'm just trying to see if I can get a little bit.
The idea was to drop the audience, drop you guys into the story. And it wasn't, the point wasn't to do a oneer, so to speak, but it was sort of to drop you guys into the world in a way that was fluid, and that what wasn't broken by sort of the artifice of cutting around the scene and drawing your attention to this or to that. It's like this fluid organism that's kind of just happening around. And to us, or to me, the really sweet thing that organically happened was we figured out this cross that's coming up, because this transaction happens, 80, 100 times a day, and these kids are just running right by it. So it felt like a really organic way to sort of introduce Mahershala Ali's character, Juan, while also bringing Alex Hibbert, our main character, Little, dropping him into the story in this way that felt fated. So far, Mahershala Ali is the only actor you've seen. Everybody else up to this point and through this point are non-actors. They're just real people from the city speaking in real voices. This apartment complex was not my original idea of what the crack house should look like. It's kind of one of those things when you're making a movie on this kind of budget, where we had to find a place that was close to the spot where we shot the opening. And lo and behold, we were scouting, and we got out the van, and I just started walking, and I cut through an alley, and we were right here in this abandoned apartment complex. And of course, we went inside. All the things that we felt we would need to bring to the set, I will just say, were already on the set. And we actually had to take quite a bit of them out and replace them with our very safe and clean props. Never really had to write a meet cute, but I guess in screenplay parlance, this first meeting between Little and Juan is more or less the meet cute of our story. Not the typical location for a meet cute, but that's what happens when you're taking it back to the home. So before considering Ali for this part, I'd really only known him as Remy Danton on House of Cards, which, looking at him on screen right now, he couldn't be further removed from Remy Danton. But man, he just fell fully, completely into character and into this part, which, the whole story kind of hinges on this guy's presence and his effect on this kid's life. And from the very, very first meeting Mahershala and I had, he kind of understood the duality of the character he was playing. Someone who's capable of such grace and considerateness and kindness, but also can go to some very dark places.
Come on now. Can't be no worse out here.
And part one, Little. Terrell's play jumped back and forth through time, but one of the very first decisions that I made when approaching the adaptation was that we should tell it in turn, that we should split it apart and have one section that was Little, one section that was Chiron, one section that was Black. And Terrell was right on board with that from the very beginning. I had seen a film by Ho Shin called 3 Times that I really loved. It featured a couple in 3 different time periods, basically playing the same couple, but structurally it just really seemed to work for me because I wanted to show the progression of this character and how the world, can nurture him in a certain way that it basically caused these drastic changes in this guy, from one stage of life to the next.
Hey, man, I apologize, all right? Just trying to get you to say something. Hey.
I love this diner, by the way. Every time we shot at this place, we went to location scout or a tech scout, I got me a fried fish sandwich, man. It was so damn good. It's our first piece of score, composed by my man Nicholas Bertel. We call this one Chiron's theme, and this is really nice. This is actually this is probably the first piece of score that was composed for the film, and Nick wrote this to the script and not to picture, and there was just something that grabbed me about it. I always knew I wanted some kind of orchestral score for the film, despite our hood setting. You don't usually think of orchestral score in hood films because you don't see them that often, but Nick got it right away and just really nailed this piece.
Hard right now. Until my girl come get you, though. She gonna make you talk.
In this movie, we knew there was going to be this element of space and silence, And this moment right here is one of the first places where we really sort of wanted to orient the audience in how you were going to be observing this main character, which is sort of watching him watch the world around him. And over the course of the film, coming to understand how that watching, that observation takes an effect on him. I'd say over the last third of the story is taking a toll on him, but right now it's just affecting him. And I love it because this is Janelle Monáe's first time acting in a film. She plays this character, Teresa. And I want to say this might be the first scene that we shot with her. But there's no dialogue, And the idea is for her to come out here and, these two characters look at one another and they're speaking without speaking. And whatever trust is built between these two characters, I think it's built in this moment. The foundation of it is set in this moment.
You don't talk much, but you damn sure can eat.
That's all right, baby.
People eating in movies. Black people eating in movies. In every chapter of this film, at some point, someone feeds this dude. And it wasn't thematically or intellectually something that I wanted to create a stamp, to make a point of, but just organically, I felt like there's something about the way I grew up and the way Terrell grew up that I wanted to reflect in this character, which is at some point you're lost and you're sort of drifting like outside yourself, outside your home, outside the community in a certain way. You might feel that way, but you're not going to go hungry. You're not going to starve to death. Someone's going to feed you. And this character, man, I don't, it wasn't intellectual, but he just ends up eating all the damn time. You know, people always want to feed this dude, which is crazy because he's so damn skinny until we get to much later in the film.
Okay. You can stay here tonight.
Thanks.
Would you like that?
Janelle and I talked about her relationship with her own family, her nephews and nieces and cousins and things like that. And again, as someone who's never acted before, I think she really found a way to identify not only with her character, but with Alex's character, with Little, through looking at her own life. And this is really genuine nurturing that comes out of her whenever she's on screen.
What happened?
And here is our queen, Naomi Harris. Naomi was amazing in this process. I mean, she's essentially playing, in my mind, a version or memory of my mom. And I'll say a composite of my mom and Terrell's mom, which is a lot to carry, you know, for an actor to know that the director has that kind of a relationship to the role you're playing. But she was tremendous, and she could not be further removed from who this character is, but she was very diligent in charting the journey of this character, Paula. Because we meet her now in this first story, and, you know, as we'll see as we go through this, she becomes a very, very different person. Yeah, but we approach it the same way. I love what James did with the scene. James and our colorist, Alex Bickle. You know, it's interesting. It looks a bit aggressive, but when I watch it, you know how they say your mind's eye? It kind of reminds me of the world I grew up in, you know? They're very heavy things going on, but they're going on in very beautiful places.
You're a real damn prize, Sharon. You know that? You gots to come home when you're meant to come home. You hear?
This kid, man, his face. This kid, bruh. Super sweet kid, man. But, man, when he turns that face on, he turns it on.
It's all right. I'ma just glad you home.
This location is probably my favorite of the whole film. And, man, we found it very early, and then we lost it, and we got it back, and then we lost it, and then we got it back.
TV privilege is revoked.
It's a very, very simple apartment. But again, this movie is sort of, for me, like a memory of my memories, or Terrell's memory of my memories, or my memory of Terrell's memories. I can't really figure it out, but this apartment just felt really appropriate to where I grew up. So this is another track that Nicholas Bertel sent me when we first started discussing the film, going purely from score. This is actually Mozart, but Nick and his orchestra recreated it, you know, because it's public domain. But again, when I heard this song, it reminded me of playing throw up tackle, which is what these kids are playing right now in the same park that I played throw up tackle growing up. And it's a cool game. You basically, it's almost like you have kids in Brazil who are in the favela. They'll take whatever paper they can find and make a soccer ball. We would take whatever paper we could find and make a football. And you throw it up, and whoever gets it, you tackle them. A really cool anecdote about making this film and the themes of it, which is, you know, there's this whole thing about rampant homophobia in the black community. Remember, we were shooting the scene, and one of the guys on set, you know, very nice guy, white dude, said to me, "Hey man, what's that game they're playing?" I was like, "Oh, they're playing throw up tackle. You know, you throw up the ball, whoever gets it, you tackle them." And he goes, "Oh, where I grew up, we called that smear the queer." And I was like, I have never heard that. And where I grew up, nobody referenced playing throw up tackle as smear the queer. And yet one community is known as being rampantly homophobic, and the other does not have those associations. So it was one of those moments, because this was day one, all this stuff in this park, where I realized that what we were doing and trying to bring nuance, and not bring nuance, but reveal the actual authentic nuance of the world I grew up in, that we were on the right track, you know?
Why you always letting people pick on you, man? What you mean?
So this kid playing Little Kevin is Jaden Piner. He and Alex Hibbert, who plays Little, they're in the same drama program at Norland Middle School. They were both 6th graders. They'd only been acting for 2 weeks when we found them, and they're shooting this maybe like a month into their first education as drama students. And I just love Jaden's performance in this scene. Because again, this is day one. Neither one of these kids has acted before. You know, this first story for me is not overtly about sexuality, you know? It's more about, you know, this idea of exploration, you know? Of really beginning to feel your body, to sort of even feel the idea of sexual identity, or of identity in general. And what I was really happy with this sequence, and particularly because it's the first damn thing we shot, it's day one, was how organic the way all these boys sort of interact was, you know? It's sort of about this idea of blossoming into whoever the hell it is you're going to become, you know? And that being manifest in these very organic ways. Boys will be boys, you know? The way boys play. You know, it's just wrestling. You know, we shot that scene. I told him, you know, it's just wrestling. Until it ain't. The relationship between Juan and Little is probably the most important thing in the film to Terrell, by which I mean, I think the story originated with an actual friendship he had with a character like Juan, who took him under his wing on the block, and I'll say when no one else would, you know, and maybe when the neighborhood or when the block was being antagonistic to Terrell for who he was becoming. And so in the original piece, there were 2 scenes where Juan sort of, I don't know how to describe it, but he's trying to sort of give this kid a guide to sort of fend for himself. And one was he taught him how to ride a bike, and the other one was he taught him how to swim. In coalescing things, I thought the swimming lesson would be the more potent way to go about it, just visually. And also, you know, as you heard in the very opening and throughout the film, we have this theme with the water and the ocean as this place of possibility, you know, and the horizon, and this place where you just feel all this vitality. And I wanted there to be a moment of, I don't want to say spiritual transference, but some sort of like deep connection between these two. And it felt like visually I could communicate that in a scene like this. And James and I decided right away that we were going to put the camera in the water with these actors, you know, and we were going to put the audience in the water with these actors. And, you know, we got there to shoot the scene and we thought we'd have 6 hours, and then we realized we'd have 90 minutes because it's Miami, you know, and we couldn't afford to have a cover set, and this huge storm was coming in. And so what we ended up with, and what we embraced and decided was, you know, that Ali was going to teach Alex how to float, and he was going to teach him how to swim, you know, and he was going to do it as the storm was coming in, and then he was going to send him out into the storm. And, you know, this sequence is probably the sequence that I'm proudest of or happiest of, because it was made under duress, and yet, in the end, I think it communicates, for me at least, all those things that I felt were essential to carrying the spirit of Juan, of Mahershala's performance, through the remainder of the film.
I've been here a long time. But I'm from Cuba. A lot of black folks in Cuba. You wouldn't know that from being here, though. I was a wild little shorty, man.
This is true. There are a lot of black folks in Cuba.
Went around with no shoes on, the moon was out. This one time, I run by this old.
I tip my hat to Terrell here. He was very, very, very diligent about sort of bringing this aspect of, you know, the Afro-Cuban as an other in Miami culture. And then I'll give Ali credit, you know, Mahershala credit for really taking that to heart, you know. And it was beautiful because for Mahershala, Juan's otherness in the black community and in the Cuban community in Miami was a direct path of empathy for him with the character Little, you know, who was realizing slowly and then rapidly that he is being othered within the community of boys he's grown up in.
At some point, you got to decide for yourself who you're going to be. Can't let nobody make that decision for you.
I haven't been talking too much for the tech folks out there. I imagine when I was in film school, I watched Commentaries and tried to listen for the things the director and the DP were doing. So I'll say now, this is an Alexa film. We shot on the Alexa 235 anamorphic, using primarily Hawk primes. And then we had, I want to say, an ingenue zoom lens that had been sort of futzed to be anamorphic. And I'll point out when we use that lens, but primarily we used Hawk primes. And I'll say it was like mostly 35, 55, 65 millimeter show, occasionally an 80, very rarely that we bring out the 25, I believe it was. But yeah, and it was, you know, we tried to keep the lensing consistent throughout the shoot, especially because we were jumping, you know, we shot mostly in sequence, story 1, story 2, story 3, but we didn't want there to be a visual cue that we were doing things differently because we're in story 2 and not story 1.
What's going on, little man?
Come on!
I love it when Alex twitches his eye right there. This was, we had shot the scene, done like 4 or 5, 6 takes, something like that. And rather than telling Alex, I want you to twitch your eye, I was like, you know, because when he first meets Juan says, "Sup, little man," and when he first meets Homeboy right there, he says the same thing, "What's up, little man?" And so I just said to Alex, you know, he just said the same thing to you that Juan said to you. He's like, "Oh, okay, I got it." And then we did the take, and he did that little thing with his eye. He's such a perceptive kid, man. Just an amazing actor. Kind of cool. These kids are actually dancing to a song by Janelle Monáe. But, you know, it's not the song you hear right now in the film. And it's kind of cool because I was able to show Janelle the scene with her song on it, and just made her day.
Yours ugly as hell.
And here we go. And now we're back, you know, into this idea of, you know, sexuality, you know, and the burgeoning of sexuality. It's interesting. You know, anybody listening to this probably knows the difference between myself and Terrell and, you know, our backgrounds and things like that. And I think if you watch the film, you would assume certain things happened to me, certain things happened to Terrell. This scene in general where these boys are standing around comparing their penises is not something that happened to Terrell. You know, it happened to me when I was in elementary school, middle school. This is what kids did. You know, I don't know if they call it sword fighting or what it is, but you know, you go into the boys' room and you'd see, you know, whose penis was the biggest. You know, and it's weird. Nobody would ever think at the time. You know, we didn't think, oh, you know, what we're doing is very gay right now. And I feel like when people watch this film, they would assume that scene happened to one of us, not the other. You know, but I think there's something universal about the way boys grow up. Especially in a world where you know, you're surrounded by boys, and this idea, this performance of masculinity, you know, and certain things happen to some boys and not other boys, but I don't think so. That wasn't my experience of the world. And then here's another, the way I grew up, sometimes we couldn't afford to keep the lights on, but if the place had gas, you didn't need lights, especially in certain months. You didn't need air conditioning. You could just open the windows, and if you wanted to take a hot bath, you would heat water up on the stove and pour it into the cold water in the bath. And that's sort of what Little is doing here. When he came home just then, I don't know if you noticed, but he looked over and the television wasn't there. That was a great note from our production designer, Hannah Beachler. When we were first going through, I want to say pre-production, she came over to me and said, "Hey, Barry, I think it would be cool if in this scene, I think it's scene 17 or something like that, he comes in and the TV's just not there. It's just not there." And I was like, you know what? It's just not there. And so we wanted to drop these little hints that things are changing at home for Little, but we didn't want to really put a signpost up about it. The guy in the car there riding with Ali is this dude named Rudy Goblin. He actually he read it with most of the kids when we were casting. He's a great dude, and the conversation they have there is really, really amazing. But the film was only so long, so we had to pull it out. There's a moment where Rudy puts his ankle up on the dashboard, and he's got an ankle bracelet on, like a home monitor. It's pretty hilarious.
What's up? All right.
And here we are. Everything comes full circle. We're back where we started, at the spot.
No vacation out here. I love to work. You know that.
I'm going to Switzerland or some shit.
Switzerland, man. Maybe Brazil.
This dude on the left, Sharif Earp, came in. We did a lot of open casting calls in the community, and Sharif came to one. It's a really for a different character, but in talking to him, we just learned that he had lived this life, and we felt like, again, we wanted to really root the story whenever we could in the actual community, like in the street, like on the block, and Sharif just took to it and did a great job.
Yo, nigga, what's up?
Hey, it's all good, man.
What the fuck you doing?
It's all good, Juan. Fuck up. It's all good.
Get out the fucking car.
Calm down.
You shut the fuck up. What's wrong with you?
Who the hell you think you is? Huh?
Bitch, get the fuck out of here.
I stopped talking because this scene always grabbed me. What's done in the dark must come into the light, is what they say. And I think in a community this small, that's often what happens. My mom went through the things that Naomi Harris's character Paula is going through in this film, and I remember not seeing those things with my own eyes very often, but being aware of them and knowing of them because I would hear about them, because it's such a small community. And so it made sense to me that these two people would cross paths, that they would cross paths in this way.
Motherfucker. Don't give me that you gotta get it from somewhere, shit nigga. I'm getting it from you. But you gonna raise my son though, right? You ever see the way he walk?
You watch your damn mouth.
You gonna tell him why the other boys kick his ass all the time? Huh? You gonna tell him? You ain't shit.
This is a very big block in a very rough neighborhood, but you could hear a pin drop when we shot this scene. People would come out of their apartments and just watch because they were just so amazed that they were watching something that, I'll be brutally honest, they had seen some version of before. but it wasn't make-believe. They had seen it actually happen out here. And so all the backgrounds in that scene we had to put in because it was so damn quiet. Over the course of the film, you're going to hear a lot of this music sort of repeating. Not repeating, but evolving, I would say. And this sort of riff by the violinist Tim Fain and composer Nick Britell is sort of connected to that swimming scene cue. This hallway with the pink light down there, where Naomi sort of like slips into. The idea was that she and Little, Naomi, Paula and Little are drifting apart, and whatever is back there in that room is something that he will never understand or see. But you guys will see it in about 60 minutes.
Hey, Teresa. Your boyfriend's here.
Boy. You talking to me today? Huh?
I love this scene. Alex came to set this day and he was ready. This is day 3 of the shoot. Alex has never acted before. Janelle has never acted before. Ali obviously is very seasoned. But I think complexity-wise of everything we did in this film, this is up there. And we had to shoot it on day 3, which is one of those things where we just had no choice but to do it on day 3. And for me, this spins on the idea I was speaking of earlier, where in this community, which is so small, these stories, these narratives, and also these very gray ideas of what's moral and what's immoral, they just collide all the damn time. And this scene, which concludes our first chapter, is just like a train wreck of all these different things. I love that Ali comes in and gives this lesson about sitting your back to the door. But then we end up with Alex sitting at the head of the table. And James and I wanted to sort of motivate the camera move off Alex, you know, that we're not adjusting off Ali to feature Alex. We're now, as almost like Alex is allowing Ali or allowing Juan to participate in this scene.
Saw your mom last night.
I hate her.
So proud of this kid, man.
Yeah, I bet you do. I hated my mom, too. I miss her like hell now, though. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
You know, sometimes when you're on set, like I said, this was day 3 of a feature film that I made 8 years after making my only other feature film. And so it was difficult for me, for all of us, you know, for my greenness, for greenness by due to inactivity, for Alex and for Janelle's lack of experience. We all just had to really find it. And but we were patient, and the whole crew was patient on this day. And I knew I wanted there to be the appropriate amounts of space in the scene, because the questions that Alex is asking, that Little is asking here, you know, they require patience.
Can't let nobody call you no faggot. I mean, unless...
Love that reaction from Janelle. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Again, one of those things that, as we're going through the scene, that the air felt really, really thick. And I think once we decided that we were going to put that reaction in the scene, and Janelle could live it, you know, it kind of opened things up a bit.
You gotta know right now. All right? Not yet.
Do you sell drugs?
I love that he looks back and forth between the two of them. They're all implicated here. Everything is gray.
Yeah.
My whole approach to this was everything is gray.
My mom. She do drugs, right?
Yeah.
I love it because at the beginning of the story, Ali is looking right at him, and he is the one who's looking away. You know, even when Janelle comes out to the car, he can't really look at her. Yet in this scene, Ali barely looks at him. Only looks at his back at the end. And now we have the blue light. So I want to talk a little bit about the sort of space in between the stories. There's so much story that passes between these chapters, you know? For me, you know, in a very glib way, I like to say, you know, it's Eisenstein, the information is in the cut, which I think is true, you know? I do think these years of passing are in the cut. That's why I wanted those lights in between. I didn't want just black. I wanted there to be some kind of presence. The other element here, though, is, I assume if you're listening to this, you've seen the film already, is that, you know, this character Juan is gone, you know? And what I wanted was the audience to have the same feeling that these kids have in this world that we grew up in, where sometimes someone's there, and then the next day they're not, you know? And so it's a bit jarring to have, because Mahershala is so good as that character in the first story, and then when you completely just snatch him out of the film, it is a bit jarring. But what I go back to is, think of how this kid felt when whatever happened to Juan, to Mahershala's character happened, you know? It was jarring, you know? And I wanted the audience to feel the same way. And it's why we just move on, and Juan is not there. And now we're swimming in this whole other world.
Be waiting for your ass, Lip.
Small tidbit, but this high school that we filmed this at is actually the high school my nephew attends, which was a nice, happy coincidence. So visually, we have changed something up just a little bit. You know, in color correction, we used a different LUT for all 3 chapters of the film. We didn't shoot them differently, not purposely at least. You know, we tried to have the visuals arise from the characters and the situations they were going through, but we do change the LUTs. So the way the sunlight is treated in story 2 is a bit different than the way the sunlight is treated in story 1 and story 3. And it's cool because, you know, we have these very deep runs into each story before we introduce the title card, but we want your eye to know right away we're just a little bit different.
Banging the back out, dog. I'm talking about banging the back out.
This is Jarrell Jerome as the teenage Kevin now, and Ashton Sanders as Chiron. And, you know, casting these guys was a process, and we never, you know, it wasn't a point to have them look like Jaden and Alex in the first story, but I do think, I mean, especially now I'm watching, so I haven't seen it in a bit. You know, you go from story 1 to story 2, and you can see those little dudes have grown into these not so little dudes.
See, Black.
I love Ashton's performance of the character. I mean, I also love Alex and Travante's. I think they each 3 of them do something very distinct. And I think each 3 of them do something that's appropriate to the stage in life that they are. And Ashton's face is just so expressive, that there were many moments where, you know, as we were talking and sort of building the character, you know, not that we took lines out of the script, but we did realize we didn't need to add many more, you know, because he could do it. I felt he could do it.
You cannot be here tonight. I got company coming. Find somewhere for you to be.
This apartment complex, Liberty Square, aka the Poke and Beans, it's one of the oldest housing projects in Miami. It's right smack dab in the middle in Liberty City. It was really important to us to shoot there because who knows by the time this Blu-ray releases or this DVD, whatever this is going to become, they might not exist anymore.
I used to give you that gin, but we ain't doing that up in here, shout it. You don't think my joke was funny?
Hannah did a great job. In the first story, the place is in the process of being painted. It's partly white, partly pink. And there's paint cans all around. You know, it's subtle. And now we arrive at the second story, and it's all white, you know. And I always love that watching the film, walking on set, you couldn't tell if it was in the process of becoming pink, you know, which is warm, or if it was in the process of becoming white, which is a bit more sterile. But again, the character of Juan is not here in the second story, and everything is all white, you know. That warmth is just a little bit gone, you know. It's all coming from Janelle's amazing, amazing self.
Thank you for this.
Boy, please. You know you can stay here anytime you need to. Okay? Anytime.
Yeah.
This was one of the most difficult choices to make, both in the shooting and in post, because you know, we have a line here where we say outright, you know, that Juan is gone, you know? But again, you know, I feel like with these two characters, even though the audience is experiencing this version of Teresa and Sharon for the first time, this is not the first time they've interacted. And so for them to openly say that Juan is gone, it felt false. But I also felt like the presence of Juan being gone is in their faces. And so instead of saying it, we have it here. And I love Janelle and Ashton because I think they performed that feeling. And sometimes you got to just really, really, really go with your gut and do what you feel is right and authentic, which is that the presence of him is present, or the lack thereof is present in the actor's performance, like in their faces, you know? Because in real life, they wouldn't still be talking about that, not openly. So Jarrell, when we first meet him, the teen Kevin, he tells this story in the stairway, and now here we are performing the story. Again, it's about the way boys communicate at that age, you know. One boy tells you one thing, and if he tells it so persuasively enough, you might dream about that thing. And so here we are on our Steadicam, floating through Teresa's house, reliving the string. And, you know, this was a very nice sort of lucky happenstance where the scene was set originally in the high school locker room, which I think would have been great, but we just couldn't do it there for a host of reasons. But I also think there's something really beautiful about getting the full run of Juan and Teresa's house and doing it out there with all the vegetation and all those things. And once we added the waves to it, it just felt, again, you know, we're in Miami, this vital place where everything's growing around you. This scene is so hard for me to watch, for obvious reasons. Again, we're back at Liberty Square.
What?
And this is the most overt element of our portraits that we do. I felt like if I was going to make this film that was so deep and so dark about my past and things I went through, I wanted to put the audience in the film, in between the characters. And so we have these portraits where the actors are looking right into the camera. And it's kind of cool. I didn't tell them when we were going to do them. But I knew I had a feeling of when I was going to do them, but I didn't share that with the actors until we were doing them. And with this one in particular, we shot them all at 48 frames. And so it's kind of cool that with this one with Naomi, you know, we got in post. And I knew the very first time I wanted to cut into it was when she says, "But I'm your mama, ain't I?" And, you know, our editors did a great thing where I said, you know, we have it at 48, but with the sound, we can force it to 24. And I wanted, to me, this is the first time that Sharon is truly seeing that his mom has become this other person, and things are slipping. And so we sort of do this thing where we're going in and out of the 48, and sometimes the voice is sung, sometimes it's not. But to me, it's rooted in the disorientation of his character, of Chiron, of his perception of what he's seeing.
I need some money.
For what?
That's my business. Don't you ask me no shit like that.
These two scenes back to back you're watching right now are the first scenes Naomi shot of this film. This is day one for her. She was just outside in the courtyard, and now she's in here doing this scene. Amazing, amazing work. And with this character she's playing, like I said, it's a composite of my mom and Terrell's mom. And just about everything in this film that involves the character Paula is something that happened to either myself or Terrell. And I remember getting in post and looking at the scene and going, did I write the scene? And I went back to the play and I realized I had added some things, but Terrell wrote the scene. And I was like, man, do you remember writing the scene? And he goes, yeah, you would remember if it had happened to you. And I was like, okay, there we go. Really, really committed work from both Ashton and Naomi here. And like I said, it's her first day on set. Very heavy things for them, for myself, for the crew. But I didn't want to go through this story and not go all the way. And these things happened. And I do think, when we get through to the third story, those things are redeemed, but we had to go there.
A lack of white blood cells can be dangerous to the human body, right?
The teacher here, Edson Jean, also read with a lot of the child actors. He's local to Miami, as we were casting. Great guy.
Nobody leaving this classroom until I get a response. This is more important for you than it is for me.
Oh man, Pat Pando, guy we walk into a freshman year sort of film elective class at Florida Memorial College, and Patrick was sitting there. Never acted before, doesn't consider himself an actor, but we had him come in and do a few scenes, and it just clicked.
Over there, nigga. Oh no, he going to Teresa's house.
Teresa? That's one lady, ain't it?
We're back in Liberty Square here, and I love all these colors in the background. I love, someone asked me, were you afraid that you were making a film that was too visually beautiful, too colorful, because of the subject matter, because things are so dark and heavy. And, this housing project has existed for 50, 60, 70 years, and that's just the color of it, and I don't think it's ever been repainted, or if it has, and hasn't been in a while. But there are these very dark, heavy things happening, and just look around. They're surrounded by this beautiful green grass and these gorgeous pastel colors. And, who am I to shrink away from that, It's a beautiful image because it's a beautiful neighborhood, It's just, the reality is some very dark things happen, amongst all this beauty.
Hey, night, little.
See you guys later.
A lot of people don't realize that Miami has not a subway, but like an elevated train. And so this sequence here happens on the Metro Mover and the Metro Rail. Metro Mover is cool because it's free. And you can if you have nowhere to go and it's hot, you can get on that thing and just ride around downtown. It stops in Overtown and then it goes through downtown. And then once you get on Metro Rail, you can just keep riding Metro Rail trains. And so I just had this idea that, Chiron is not a grown man, but once you get to the age that Ashton is, in this community, where I grew up in, you're kind of a grown-ass man. You can't run to people whenever you have troubles. And so to me, it felt like this was a moment where, he just got picked on by these dudes who keep running him into the ground. His mom is tripping. He doesn't want to go back to Teresa's house tonight, He wants to find a way to fend for himself, Because again, this is a kid that Juan helped raise, and Juan's a real strong dude. So he's just floating around on the Metro until it closes. And now we are going to our place of solace, the life-giving place. The moon, the wind, the sand, the ocean. In Miami, the hood is a 20-minute bus ride from the ocean, man. And the ocean is free.
You was waiting for me?
I love the way Kevin just appears here.
Well, nice to see
Love,
you.
love, love.
What you doing
These
out here,
kids, man, they were so damn strong.
What you doing out here?
I didn't want to make a film that dealt with these themes that didn't have an overt moment of sensual exploration, sexuality. You know, it just felt like a cop-out to not have that. And this age, of the three ages, felt the most appropriate place to do it, especially once we started charting the character. I felt like this was the moment where this side of the character had to come to the surface. And I remember talking to Jarrell and Ashton. You know, they're both really young actors. You know, Jarrell we found in a high school theater program. You know, Yessi Ramirez, our casting director, was really, really sharp. We had a hard time finding someone who could play this kid as a teenager because we knew Andre Holland was going to play him as an adult. And Andre is just so comfortable in his body, so charismatic, so smooth. We needed someone who you could feel could become that person. So we searched far and wide, and then Yessi had the brilliant idea of looking at, because we had already cast Ashton, so we knew the age we needed somebody to look. She had the brilliant idea of looking at high schools that fed into the best undergrad drama programs in the New York City area. And that was how she found Jarrell. But they were both super inexperienced. By inexperienced, I mean, they had never shot a sex scene, you know? They probably had never shot a scene of dialogue that goes on. I mean, the scene's maybe like 5-6 minutes. And I had never directed a sex scene. So it was a really complex night. It's day 10? Either day 10 or day 15. I can't remember which, but it's the end of a week. A Sunday night, we're out on the beach. There's this huge, huge moon rig above them that James and Anthony and Kiva sort of built to mimic the Moonlight, you know, as the title of the film so dictates. And so there's just a lot of like the machinations of filmmaking. Despite us being a small film, this is the night when those machinations are really, really front and center. And I remember talking to Jarrell about the scene. You know, I talked to them both separately, and then Jarrell came over and sat down next to me while, you know, the grips and the electrics, our amazing grips and electrics, especially on this night, we're building this thing and making sure that it was safe, because you can see by the way their shirts are flapping, there's a lot of wind on this night, and we had to make sure they were safe. And so Jarrell comes over and he's like, hey, Barry, what's this scene about? And man, when I'm working, you know, to me it's chopping wood, you know, despite the fact that we're doing this very sexual thing on this night, it's no different than us shooting, you know, a fight scene on another day, you know, or just like a walk and talk on day 2. It's all the same, or I try to approach it all the same. So I said, oh, you know, we're shooting the scene. It's what's in the script. And he goes, oh, okay. And I could tell he was nervous. And so I was like, you know, and we just started talking about, you know, just experiences, you know. I just try to just make it personal, you know. I talked about my life. He talked about his life. And just about, you know, having caring partners, you know, being caring for someone else. And it was a really good conversation. It didn't last too long, but it was really good. And then, you know, he got really, really quiet. And then I knew he wanted to ask a question. And he was like, is this the first time this character, Kevin, has ever kissed another man? And I said, no, it's definitely not the first time Kevin has kissed another man. And he goes, okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I thought. And he goes, is it the first time Sharon has kissed another man? I didn't say anything. I love it when actors, in this sort of like probing process, instead of me giving an answer, we arrive at the answer together. So I didn't say anything. He goes, you know, has Sharon ever kissed another man? I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, and it just dawned on him. This thing came over his face. He said, oh, Sharon has never kissed anybody, huh? And I said, exactly. Sharon has never kissed anybody. And from then, he knew what his role was in the scene, or he had a way into it that he could relate to. You know, we went through this whole process of tying it into a personal story from his background, from his life, to figuring out what the personal story of the character is, the other character in the other character in the scene was, and he just had it, you know. And then at that point, just like me, I approached it as chopping wood. For him, it was chopping wood, you know, because I don't ever want to do a scene that has this heightened importance. You know, we're doing this thing that's super important. It's never been done before. No. We're just doing a scene, and we need to break it down the way we break down every other scene. I tip my hat to cinematographer James Laxton on this scene. Sometimes you think of something in your head and you have this idea of what it's going to look like. And this is one of those scenes where in the finished film, I look at it and it is just exactly what I'd hoped it would look like, you know?
What you gotta be sorry for?
We wanted music here. We had a much bigger cue here for quite a bit. I mean, for a long time during the post process, and slowly, you know, over the course of weeks and months, you know, we just kept peeling it back, you know, to its essence, you know, to the barest essentials. And we ended up with this little lilting piano that I think is very bittersweet.
You ain't never done nothing like that before, huh?
So James and I, again, we're trying to find moments, the cinematographer James Laxton and I, where we could visually underscore what these characters were feeling. So these two shots you're watching right now are shot at 48 frames, because it's sort of, in this story, the last moment where these two characters are really seeing each other eye to eye. And so it's a subtle thing. I feel like, you know, even when I watch it, I can't really tell that it's at 48, but when they claps hands right there, you know, we felt like there was a very charged moment of, again, this sort of like spiritual transference in some certain way. This apartment, man. This is a very real place. Very real things have happened over the decades.
Come here. You don't love me no more.
I love the way Naomi played this.
You don't love me no more.
It's sincere and yet it's unhinged at the same time.
You're my own.
But I do think at the root of it, it's very, very sincere. And to me, the idea of it was this person at the core of who she is, you know, who ultimately does love her son, is pushing through the fog of this raging addiction. I love the scene in the cafeteria. Just the voice of it is just so specific to the way we grew up, man. And I remember these games. I remember having this conversation, you know, because and I also remember that on Fridays, if you went to a public school, you had pizza, you know, and it was the shit, you know. It was the only thing you would actually wait for. You wanted to eat the Friday pizza, and so filming this, man, it just took me back. And I think that, you know, Patrick and Jarrell did a great job with the scene as well.
King of that shit.
Yeah, I remember. Yo, you remember that white kid you fucked up?
The Cuban cat, right?
You know, the movie is sort of about, again, this idea of masculinity and the performance of masculinity. You know, it's like nature versus nurture. I'm very much a nurture person. And sometimes think nurture can, you know, I sometimes think you can be nurtured for good and nurtured for bad, you know. You know, you can sometimes, you know, be sort of lulled into this idea of accepting and really becoming who you actually are. And sometimes the world can push you in a way that forces you to become who you think you need to be in order to survive in this very aggressive world, you know. And this moment here, to me, is the clearest performance, in this chapter at least, of the ill effects of masculinity, you know, as it could be performed. in this world where, you know, power and domination and basically vanquishing things that are perceived as weak, you know, where it can be just corrosive. You know, and the idea with this moment, you know, with this visual sort of swirling of Terrell as we're about to sort of drift into the standoff between our two main characters. Again, it was about very fluidly bringing the audience into this place where masculinity, the performance of it, has become toxic, you know? The world has literally drilled us down into the standoff. And now it must be beat out of us. Or beat into us.
I think you want another one.
Another one. Do it.
I'll get to him.
It's funny, I watch this and what I see is James fighting our actors, essentially. Man, this was a hot-ass day. I think James might have lost 12 pounds shooting this scene. But again, you know, this is very dark stuff. And I think film is inherently voyeuristic. I did not want to allow the audience to be a voyeur in these things and these very dark exchanges. I wanted them to be within them, you know? I want them to feel them the same way that our characters are feeling them. This guy with the dreads, this is Jesus Mitchell. All the cars you see in the film were wrangled by Jesus and our co-producer, Andrew Havia. Andrew Havia and Lucas Leva of the Borscht Film Festival. There's Arts Collective. They were the first people to give me Terrell's play.
Stop this from happening. Understand?
You won't even know.
Oh, I don't?
No.
You think all this just started, boy?
I ain't no boy.
I love Ashton's performance here.
If you were a man...
You know, at some point this character had to break, and, you know, and this is the moment.
You don't even know.
But I'll step off that for a second to speak about the principal here, Miss Tanisha Seidel, who is an actor in her own right, but she also is the drama teacher who brought us Alex Hibbert, who plays Little in the first story, and Jaden Piner, who plays Kevin, young Kevin, in the first story. She runs that program at Norland Middle School, and she does an amazing job with those kids, and she does an amazing job in this scene. And she's given a great performance here, but, you know, this movie's all about the main character, and so it's all about, you know, getting into this interior mind space. And so we wanted to drift her voice out over the course of that scene because it's not getting through. Because instead the character is slipping much, much further inside. The music you're hearing here, again composed by Nicholas Britell, is one of the things in the film that I was proudest of just the process of getting to it. All the percussion you're hearing here, the drums, they're sort of built from these interactions between Kevin and Chiron. So in that first scene in the story, when they meet in the hallway, when they clasp hands together, when they dap, all the drums you hear in here are taken from that hand clap. We took the clap and resampled it and built drums out of it, you know, through using the methods of chopped and screwed, which I'll talk about later in the third story. But the whole idea of the sequence, this walk that is scored to music, was to build it from the character out. And so all these sounds you're hearing, you know, they're taken from actual people speaking or hands clapping, things like that.
All right, people, stay focused.
And the break is complete. I feel like, for a character like Chiron, when you're constantly being attacked, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, intellectually, at some point you will break. And, Ashton and I, really talked extensively about charting a course. And so we tried to shoot the story as much in sequence as possible. We talked about charting a course where we could build to that break, believably build to that break. And we're back on our Eisenstein. The information is in the cut. And now I reveal that these flashing lights you're seeing, they're actually the slate. So they literally communicate time. I had the second AC put the slate right up to the lens, and we rolled the camera. That's what those lights are, you see, to represent the time that's passing. And here we are. Naomi's coming, or Paul is coming out of that pink light, and... we have a man who has grown up haunted by his past. Literally. Trevante Rhodes came in to read for the character Kevin. Originally, he came in to read for Kevin, which I think back on now, and it makes me laugh. As he was reading, I turned to my right, and Adela Romansky, my producer, had passed me a note. It was like middle school, and it said, "Not Kevin, black." This story starts off in Atlanta, and we wanted to find a way to ground the story in Atlanta, and I could think of nothing more Atlanta than Goody Mob Cell Therapy, which is what's playing right now. When you first see this character in the third story, I hope by this point you've become accustomed to not getting the character introduction until you've already experienced the character visually in the story. And yet Trevante is just such a radical departure from Alex and from Ashton that I imagine this would be a bit jarring for the audience. But it should be, because I do think when this performance of masculinity runs amok, this can be what happens, a man can fortify himself so much, can bury his true self so much that he literally takes on a different form, which is what the idea was when Trevante came in and read, and I just saw it in him. I just saw him as this character. So this next song coming up is Erykah Badu, Tyrone, Chopped and Screwed. And I could think of nothing more appropriately hood or masculine than this song, Chopped and Screwed. Chopped and Screwed is a version of hip-hop where they take the music and they slow it down and they reduce the pitch. And we actually had our composer, Nicholas Bertel, do our chops for us. And he did a great job. I'll speak more about that in a bit. So this scene, again, because we're introducing this new person, same character, new person. And despite the fact that Juan is absent from the second story, I think his presence still looms large. And I think in this scene, it's Black performing or attempting to perform in the way Juan did, And so this whole thing about the count being short, to me, it's sort of this play on Black teaching a life lesson, but he's not going about it the same way that Juan went about it, he's trying to be the same thing, or he's trying to take what he feels was the good from that encounter with Juan, which is to be strong, to literally be able to self-sustain, to float, but he's doing it in a very, very hyper masculine way.
You did what?
I mean, that is the look of, that is not a caress, that look.
Nah, I'm just fucking with you.
Huh? Count good.
Trevante did a great job. And this kid, Travis, also did a great job. Another of the principal in the second story, Miss Seidel. This kid went through her program at Norland Middle School also, and did a great job for us. You know, we tried to mirror these camera movements above the characters. You know, we tried to treat the characters in very specific moments the same way. So in the story too, right before Ashton has the dream about Kevin, before Sharon has the dream about Kevin, we do the same sort of drift, this arcing drift above him. In here, when Black is in bed, we do the same thing. Just a very subtle thing to visually unite the stories, you know.
Atlanta rainbow's so big. Seem to me you come see your mama from time to time. Hope you're getting some rest, baby. Hope you come back soon.
Yeah, I think it was Eudora Welty who said there's only two great stories. Either a man goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town. And I think in this case, in 2016, it's a stranger calls, you know, and then a man goes on a journey.
Hello? Hey, Black. Sharon. What's up, man?
This was one of those really just lovely things that happens when actors are very, very committed. When we shot this scene, it was just meant to be Trevante, and we were going to find a way to have some kind of voice actor with him, either in the room or on the phone. But Andre had actually flown himself down to Miami just to become reacquainted with the city, because this was the week before Andre was scheduled to start work. And so we actually had Andre come by. I didn't let them meet because I didn't want them to meet, you know, until they were shooting together. But, you know, it's a luxury that Trevante is actually performing to Andre on the other end of the line, you know. I think he gives a wonderful performance, you know, because of that. You know, and I think because it's the first time he's hearing Andre Holland's voice, you know, you get that same sort of charge that I think the characters in the film are getting, you know, from hearing their voices for the first time after so long.
Hey, man, I'm sorry about all that. All that shit what went down.
And for the filmmakers out there, the young filmmakers out there, this was a really cool experience for me. You know, I've rarely had the budget where we could do something like this, but, you know, because of Trevante's skin tone and because of the location we were shooting in, we actually budgeted in, you know, to do all these tests and find the exact right paint to put on the wall in this bedroom. You know, we couldn't afford, you know, to build an amazing set or to, you know, to go and find the perfect location. And so this is just a very simple apartment complex, which is what a guy who's doing what he's doing at his level would live in. But these are all white walls. And yet, you know, both Hannah Beachler, our production designer, and James Laxton, our cinematographer, you know, the three of us got together and really tried to find, you know, a color to paint these walls that would complement Trevante's skin and the quality of light we were using the best. By the other token, in this diner on the Andre side of it, which we shot a week later, I wanted there to be something mythic about him when we first meet him. And so working with James and our gaffer, you know, we came up with this exposed fluorescent light that's right in front of him. Not to create, I mean, in this shot, we have this sort of like halo around him, but I wanted there to be not necessarily a glow, but something just a little bit extra, you know, about that character, you know, because I feel like the journey that the Black character is going through, that Trevante's going through, you know, this character's already been through it a bit, you know, and I always described it to Andre as though you guys are in a tunnel and you have this light, you know, and you're not pulling him, you know, you're not pushing him, you're just a guide, you know, and at his time, at his pace, you know, you're leading him with that light. And so when we first meet him, you know, I wanted there to be this light that felt like organically it would be there. You know, you're shorter to cook, you know, you'd have a light over your workstation, but, you know, we wanted to leave it unexposed, you know, to to bring a little bit of that glow to Kevin. This cue by Nick, this is one of the most extreme versions of Chopped and Screwed that we have. This is orchestral score. You know, these are people, you know, who play part-time in the New York Philharmonic, or maybe full-time in the New York Philharmonic, I don't know. These are very experienced classical music players, but we're applying these very southern, you know, this Houston/Tampa aesthetic to their music. And so what you're getting is, when you hear this track in a theater, this scene, the bass just moves through your body, you know, which is my experience of growing up listening to all these box Chevys sort of rattling, you know. But I think the feeling that has been communicated between these two characters is so deep that I wanted it to literally reverberate through the theater, you know, and I wanted to do it with these double bass viols, you know. This is Travante's first day of work. After this day of work, I forbid him from working out for the rest of the shoot. Oh, man. You know, the thing with making this film that was most personal for me was this relationship here between Paula and Black. And as I said, there wasn't a scene with Naomi's character that didn't happen in some way to either myself or Terrell. And this scene, for me, is literally about, you know, my reconciliation with my mom, you know, after she, such a strong woman, after she won her battle with addiction. I think we still had to get to the point where we could resolve the battle amongst us, you know, between ourselves. And that was really what this scene was about.
How's she doing?
Good. This is one of those times when you're on set and you're at Video Village and you look around and the people making the film are in tears, which was a shocking experience for me. Because, you know, when I'm in it, it's just chopping wood. But it's probably why, you know, even now when I watch this film, you know, and I only watch it when I have to, you know, I tend to close my eyes at this scene.
That's good, Mom.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is too. I really do.
It's interesting because this is one of the few moments of transference, as I've been talking about, where the characters are sitting opposite another, across one another, where we don't do that thing. We don't do the portrait. It just didn't feel right in this moment, because in this moment something changes, you know? And I think in the other moments of transference, things don't change immediately. But with this scene, I felt like, you know, he gets in that car and he drives back to Miami because something has changed, you know? Something has been healed. And I didn't want to get in the way of that.
I mean, I fucked it all the way up. I know that. But your heart ain't gotta be black like mine, baby. I love you, Sharon. I do. I love you, baby. I mean, you ain't gotta love me. Lord knows I did not have love.
Yeah, Travante and Naomi just worked so hard on this scene, by which I mean they were just fully committed, you know, every single take, you know. And this was a one-camera show. We never had two cameras. We just couldn't afford it. But no matter which side we were on, they both just went all the way. And this is really, really difficult, taxing material. But they did it, you know. They did it. You know, and here's where you want to be fluid on set. So Naomi Harris is not a smoker, and it was a little bit windy, but she had a hard time lighting the cigarette. And so we had done 3 or 4 takes of this, and without telling her, I whispered in Travante's ear. I said, "Hey, bro, I want you to reach over and take the cigarette and light it for her. And he did it. And once he did that, and she didn't expect it, once he did that, it was just this thing of love, you know? Because I remember when my mom first kicked her habit, smoking became this thing that she did. And, you know, and we were all fine with it, you know? But I just saw it as this very soothing, sort of like healing kind of thing. And for him to help her with that, it just solidified the reconciliation.
I'm so sorry.
And for them on set too, it just brought them together, because this is the only scene in the film that Trevante and Naomi shoot together. It's the only time they met on the set for one day, for a half day, to be brutally honest. And, you know, just finding ways to physically, emotionally bind them together, you know, it just made the scene come to life. And when he reaches over and takes that cigarette, which is not scripted, you know, it was just one of those things that it brought it all to life. Got to give a shout out to my man, Mr. John Lyons, one of my mentors, and a really great friend, for helping us with this moment. If he ever hears this, thank you so much, my friend. You know, I grew up in the world that we're depicting. I think I grew up as a filmmaker in a different world. Most of the films that I've seen over the course of my life that I love, I saw at the Telluride Film Festival, which is more of sort of like a prestige, high art kind of place. And so something about my aesthetic approach to filmmaking is rooted in that world, but I'm also grounded in this place that I'm from. So it felt organic to have Caetano Veloso in the same movie as Erykah Badu and Goody Mob and Jadena, you know, which is what we're hearing right now. It's Jadena's classic, man. Chopped and Screwed, of course. So we've been going through all this story. You know, at this point, we've covered, 15, 20 years of story. And we've done it in about 70 minutes at this point, maybe 80 minutes. I can't remember exactly where we are in the film. But we've been covering a lot of ground. We're covering it at a very deliberate pace, but we're covering a lot of ground. And this moment, to me, even on the page, I felt like now, you know, we've built this character. You know, we've seen all these three actors. Trevante has done such a great job that now, you know, we know this character. We believe that Little has become Chiron, has become Black. And now I wanted to reorient the audience. So the two longest shots in the film are the shots, you know, other than the opening, that the Steadicam Warner, are these two shots you're watching right now. You know, he's pulled up, he's putting on his shirt, he's walking across the parking lot. And in a certain way, I feel like the first time you see the film is like, why am I still watching this? Why am I still watching this? And it's because I felt we needed to reorient the audience. We need to reset the pace at which we're telling the story. And now here's number 2. The doorbell rings us in, and later it's going to ring us out. But for this moment now, again, you know, we're readjusting how we perceive time. Because for this next sequence, over the course of this dine-in, this reunion of sorts, you know, now time is going to pass a little bit differently, you know? Because now this character is going to begin this metamorphosis. And it's a metamorphosis that I want the audience to feel in real time. I've never done this before, but as we were shooting the scene on set, I had my phone. I was playing music in one ear, and it was this song, just to get the pacing and the timing right. Again, I had no idea if we would actually get the song, but this was sort of like the flow that I wanted for this movement. And flowing from that, I knew that I wanted a moment of charged sort of reconnection between these two. And so this is the last time that we do our portrait vignettes, where the actors are looking right into the camera. And just like with Naomi and Ashton before, and Naomi and Little before them, or Paul and Little, I did not tell Trevante and Andre when we were going to do this. But I had in my head that I knew it would be this moment when they first look at each other. And again, everybody was just so lived in. They were just so in their character that whenever I decided it was the moment to do this, you know, they organically just lived in that moment, you know, which is very difficult to do when you're looking right into an anamorphic lens.
What you doing down here? I mean, hey, Hey, you here now, man. That's all that matters. There you go with that damn nod again, man.
See, with these two, it was just about the way they looked at one another. And I even love that first embrace when they give each other dap. You know, this clasping of hands that black men do when they greet each other. You know, we do it in each of 3 stories: Kevin and Black, or Kevin and Little, Kevin and Sharon, and then Kevin and Black. In this story, you know, they give each other dap. And in this one, right when they give each other dap and they hug, you know, I love the way Travante's hand just lingers on Kevin's back, on Andre's back, just for a split second, you know? Because again, things are slowly being transferred. All this calcification that we've seen in the character is slowly being thawed. And it's being thawed, you know, by this genuine act of nurturing, you know? Which is what I love about Andre Holland's performance as Kevin. He's just so nurturing.
One chef special coming right up.
I love this piece by Nick, and I love it because the sequence of Kevin cooking for Black, you know, to me, it's the actual lovemaking in this story, and probably in this film, you know. I said that in each story, you know, someone cooks for Black. This is the only time where we show the actual process of that cooking, because I think, you know, Andre's performance of the sequence, he just puts so much care into it. That I think it goes beyond just sustenance, you know. It's legitimately, this guy has walked in, and as he says later, it's not what he expected. And so he's performing these small, simple, concrete acts, you know, that are just to show you were cared for. And that's what I feel in the music, and it's what I see in the images there.
Chef special.
I'll see you Cuban now.
Only in the kitchen, Poppy. Y'all sit down, man. Are you gonna eat standing up?
We shot the sequence over 2 nights. We thought we would have 3 nights, but we did it in 2 nights. Everything inside and outside this diner we did in 2 nights. And for a couple really big stretches of the sequence, we just had to shoot them, you know, like instead of breaking up these individual scenes, these guys just had to just do it, you know. And so we're just going through like 6-7 pages, you know, in a take, and they both just did a great job at it.
You gonna drink with me?
You know, as a director, I asked them permission to do that, you know. I never want to put an actor into a position where they're comfortable, you know. If they were not comfortable with that, we would have probably just had to, you know, reduce what we were doing, actually alter some of the scenes. I would rather alter the scenes to make these guys comfortable with how much information they can process and organically perform, rather than, you know, forcing them to run 7 pages back to back to back, you know, because I feel like I need these 7 pages.
My fault.
Damn, bro. Like you said, you didn't drink.
You can't really taste it, so I don't mess with it.
And here's a happy accident. Again, they're so unseen that Travante just picked that bean up. And then Andre's so good, he just jumped on it.
It's not how to do it. It tastes good.
Chill out, bro.
When I watch the film with an audience, this is one of those moments where I feel genuinely like an audience member too, because I remember sitting there watching that happen, and it wasn't planned, and just knowing, wow, I'm watching real life. You know, these guys are actually living in the scene.
Got it, Mr. Joyce? Thanks.
And again, this whole sequence for me is about, and I refer to it as a sequence, although I love that I've spoken to people who refer to it as a scene. I think it's beautiful that it would be referred to as a scene, because there's so much time is passing, and there's so many moments, you know, that are flowing into one another. that I feel like there are multiple scenes that become a sequence. Oh, this, by the way, this photo is actually a photo of one of our crew member, of our production designer's son, which was really sweet of her. Because her son kind of did look like a baby Andre Holland, and so I love that Lil Beachler is in the film, and it's kind of cool. This is one of the things where you're open to the process. Andre Holland actually taped himself for this role, which I'm gonna go on record apologizing to Andre again, because he's so damn good that he never should have taped himself. We should have just given him this damn part. But in his tape, he performed that moment where he takes his wallet out of his pocket and shows Black a photo of his son, which again is about, I'm going to be so open. I'm going to invite you into every aspect of my life to show you that it's okay to be open. And it wasn't in the script, but it worked so well in his tape that I was like, oh, we're doing that. And we put it in the script.
You know the deal. Your ass eat, your ass speak.
I was actually raised by a series of grandmas, so getting a line in there about grandma's rules was very important to me.
I'm trapping.
What?
Yeah. When they sent me to Atlanta, put me straight in the juice for beating the old boy. Met this dude in there. When I come out, he put me on the block. They good at it and rolls up. That's what it is.
Bullshit, man. That ain't what it is. That ain't you, Sharon.
Nigga, you don't know me.
I don't know you.
And now we're at this point where I feel like, any good character in drama is going to be a character who ultimately has to make a choice, And whether that character is passive, whether they're aggressive, whether they're an observer or a participant, at some point, whether through action or inaction, you make a choice. And this character, Little Chiron Black, doesn't make many choices, or he doesn't make obvious choices. But I did want to bring into this sequence, now that we're in real time and we're observing this character reconnect, with one of the most important people in his life. And we're going through this reunion, which is beautifully performed by Andre Holland and Trevante Rhodes. I wanted there to be a moment where the door is there, where if he wanted to, he could choose to decide, this is enough. This thawing that has been taking place, I don't like it. It doesn't feel right. And there's the door, And I even feel like in my mind, Andre or Kevin has gone back into that kitchen and he's standing there and he wants to give him again the space to make that choice. And so again, depending on what room you're sitting in or the surround sound you have, the world starts to swirl a little bit, and we sort of get his ear gets closer to that door, because he could choose to go or he could choose to stay. I feel like he chooses to stay.
Why'd you call me?
What?
Why'd you call me?
So sometimes, man, in life, you hear a song or, you see an image, you're walking down the street and you look in one direction and, the sun is hitting this thing a certain way, or you see a couple either, in a moment of love or in a moment of anger, and those things get imprinted on your brain. And this song coming up, this Barbara Lewis song, Hello Stranger, is one of those things for me. I used to go to this DJ night in San Francisco called Soul. It was a soul night. And it happened on a Tuesday at the Makeout Room. And they would play what they call chill soul, like down-tempo soul. And whenever this song came on, and I'm not much of a dancer or a public dancer, I would always get up out of my seat and dance this song. It just really, really made an impression on me. This is one of the songs that is written into the script. Literally, the lyrics are written into the script because that's what it meant to me. And I felt like in the film, you know, it would mean the same to the audience. It could have the same, like, emotional impression on these characters that it had on me when I first heard it. And that doesn't always work, you know. I've tried that, you know, in the past and it didn't work. But with this song, in this particular moment, this sequence, it absolutely worked. I remember being on set, and we're actually playing this song on set, and just feeling this energy, both amongst the crew and between the actors, that, you know, it was just unmistakable, you know. It was I love holding there on Trevante with his eyes down, because I think when he looks up, a choice has been made. And I also love, you know, the old gentleman who's walking down the block. To me, he's like this observer, you know, he's sitting there, he's not judging, you know, but he's a witness. He's a witness. He's a witness to this emotional exchange that's taking place, you know, to these guys reconnecting and slowly melting back into one another.
It's you? You weren't playing about them traps, huh? Dirty, huh? Something like that. So how you be getting to work?
So this scene is the first scene that Trevante and Andre shot together, and we're shooting it about 30 minutes after they first meet in person. It's after a few days, about a week after we had filmed that phone conversation that Andre called in on. But this is about a half hour after these men have first met, ever, in real life. And, you know, I chalk it up to, one, them just being tremendous performers. Two, something about the scene, you know. I think Trevante is performing this comfort, you know, despite the fact that this drive is bringing him closer and closer to an acceptance of himself and admittance of certain things within himself, you know, that he's not comfortable with. But I also chalk it up to just diligent work by these two guys, and trust. Because, man, their rapport here is just so on point.
Yeah.
Man, and James and Kiva, I mean, this is, you know, we're on a process trailer here, you know, which is not, you know, doesn't afford you, like, the best sort of, like, you know, the most options for lighting, and we're dealing with two very different skin tones in the scene. But James just really nailed it. You know, as if, you know, making a film that's full of black people with all these different shades of this beautiful dark skin. You know, it was a concern of mine to make sure that the lushness of these actors came through. And in that scene, which is very difficult lighting-wise, I think Trevante's skin just glows, man, in this awesome way. Here's my man Nick Bertel again, coming in with Chiron's theme, which is, again, one of probably the first piece that was ever written, a piece of music that was written for this film. And it was written without picture, it was written to the script. And I think because of that, the feeling of it is just so in line with Terrell's vision, with my vision. It's something it comes from the foundation of the piece, and I love the way it's interwoven throughout.
Come on in.
Hey, I'm just get out of this real quick.
This apartment is so small. I don't think you can really understand how small this apartment is. And so we got here and we thought we would shoot the scene that's coming up, which is, basically the final scene of the film. We thought we'd shoot it in the living room. I'd written it to be staged in the living room. But, again, working on this budget, with this time frame, you have to walk into a place and figure out, what feels the most organic for the emotion of this scene. And for us, we got there, and this is the last day of shooting, we realized that it was the damn kitchen. Because Hannah had done all this work in the kitchen, and those portraits back there are meant to be portraits from Andre's son, the small child that he has. And I just thought there was something really nurturing about the space. You have these hand-drawn things from this guy's kid. Again, he's being very open about it. And he's also, Black says he has a headache. So he's like, oh, I'll make you some green tea. It's all about this nurturing, this caress, It's about countering the ill nurturing that has been going on for the past decade of this guy's life,
Trying to be nothing else.
Oh, okay, so you hard now.
And I'll give credit to an amazing crew where, on the last night of production, and it was a night, to make that big a switch, where no, we're not going to like the living room, we're going to like the kitchen. We're not going to do this move, we're going to do that move. Everybody just rolled with it, and I'm super pleased that we made that choice and that the actors were so comfortable and they just did it.
Remember,
because here's what you afforded. So Andre, they both start off with their backs against the wall, and yet we kept Trevante against the wall because he's hemmed in. He's always hemmed in. But Andre steps forward, and he's got all this space around him. And again, to me, thematically, Andre is very kindly, very warmly, leading this guy. He's guiding him, not forcefully, but he's guiding him. And so it felt right to me that there should be more space around him than there is around Black, around Trevante. And in this that kitchen is tiny, in this very small space, I think still visually we communicate, the difference between these two men and where they are in their life, but we create the space, Andre and Trevante create the space where the one can lead the other, where Trevante or Black's character can feel comfortable coming forward, coming out of himself, out of this shell he's built up.
And now?
Now, man. Now I got a little Kev. Got this job. Got another 18 months probation.
That's some real shit, bro.
Oh, man, it's a life. I ain't never had that before. Like I'm tired as hell right now, man. And I ain't making no more than shoe money, but
again, watching this, I'm just thinking of just what a great job Hannah and her team did, the whole art department.
that's that real shit.
Because in the script, Andre goes in here, Kevin goes in there by himself just to make tea. So, they could have very easily, especially on this budget, cut a lot of corners and just, put the pot there and put this and put that and been done. But they just did so much work in here. I love that, on the left of him, we have this iron grate. On the right of him, we have an empty cork board, it's all there to be written, if you decide to start writing it, and yet also we have these portraits, drawn by Andre's son, those things were meant to just be a walk by. Like literally Andre would walk by them and go set the pot on the stove and come back out into the living room. But they had done such a thorough job because they cared so much. They did the whole damn apartment, that it gave us the freedom at the last minute to go, you know what? This space feels like the space we're going to do it in. And it was lived in because they did the work, This is the space we're shooting this in is like a vacation rental kind of. So it's not a lived-in place. No one lives in this apartment, you know. Everything you're seeing in here, the art department brought, and man, they did such a good job. I love the contrast of that smile from Andre with this bowing up that Travante does. It's weird because externally the bowing up seems masculine, but it's so vulnerable, you know? But it's a response to kindness coming off Kevin, coming off Andre. My last shout out of this film will be to my buddy Mark Sariak, regards to this scene specifically. We shot this the same day as we shot the swimming scene, and this is the very last thing we shot on that day. This is all real light. And I knew at that moment when we shot this that I wanted to close with this image, you know? After going through all this, I wanted the audience to look our character in the eye and look him in the eye at the very beginning of the story, you know, because there's so many men that go through this journey that the character has gone through, and I wanted to be reminded of that at the very, very last moment. Last thing I'll say is this song, the end credit song that's playing right now. This is again chopped and screwed orchestra. This piano riff that's playing is the same riff that plays after the beach scene in story 2. And in the kitchen at the very end, just now. But Nick has taken the cello and the violin and the bass, and he's chopped and screwed them, literally. And what you get is, you know, the Jadena song, Classic Man. If you're in a theater, that's not the heaviest bass you're going to hear in this film. It's going to be this orchestral piece of score that's been chopped and screwed. And what I love about that, and what Nick did that I think is so just on point is, you know, as opposed to having this art house sensibility on top of this hood sort of like story, you know, which is where I'm from, you know, he's taken it and merged it with the aesthetics of the world I grew up in, you know? And so it's like we have the orchestra, but it's not on top of the community, it's filtered through the community, which I really love, you know? To me, it's sort of, it encapsulates, you know, the whole process of making this film for me. And I think everybody in all the other various departments went about it the same way. Thank you guys for watching Moonlight. Thank you for listening to this commentary track. Again, I remember being in film school listening to a lot of these, so, you know, I tried to be honest, and I hope I illuminated some things you may have had questions about or were curious about. Much respect.